Right now, the Baltimore Ravens find themselves at a pivotal moment in their season. And at the heart of that moment is head coach John Harbaugh. This isn't just your typical mid-season critique. This is something much deeper. The fan base is divided. Former players are speaking up. And even inside the locker room, you get the sense that something just isn't clicking the way it used to. And the big question is simple, but huge. Is John Harbaugh still the right man to lead the Ravens? Now, let's be clear. We're not talking about just any coach. This is John Harbaugh, Super Bowl champion, one of the most respected coaches in the league. The guy who turned the Ravens into a consistent contender year after year. But even legends hit a wall, and some voices around the league are starting to wonder if Harbaugh's message is starting to lose its power in that Baltimore locker room. Chris Canty, a former Raven, recently spoke out with some comments that hit hard. He didn't come with slander, didn't try to disrespect Harbaugh. In fact, he praised him as a great coach. But he said something that a lot of fans have quietly been feeling for a while now. That maybe the message has gone stale. That maybe Harbaugh's way of leading, something that worked beautifully for over a decade, just doesn't resonate with this generation of players anymore. And when you hear that from someone who wore the Ravens jersey, someone who knows what the standard in Baltimore used to be, it makes you stop and think. It's been over a decade since the Ravens hoisted that Lombardi trophy in 2012. And since then, just 3 playoff wins. For a franchise that prides itself on being one of the league's most physical, disciplined, and elite organizations, that's just not cutting it. Especially when you've had someone like Lamar Jackson under center. You've had the talent. You've had the rosters. You've had multiple shots to make a deep playoff run. But year after year, something has gotten in the way. Injuries, poor decisions, collapses in big moments. Things that often come down to coaching. And look, Harbaugh has had chances. Plenty of them. The organization has stood by him when other franchises would have made a change. That loyalty speaks volumes about how much respect he's earned. But it also raises a question. Has that loyalty become a weakness? Is the front office so committed to the Harbaugh era that they're afraid to turn the page, even if the results just aren't there anymore? Former safety Eric Weddle also had some strong thoughts. He pointed to specific game decisions, like the goal line play calling in a recent matchup, and said flat out, coaching matters. He didn't understand why Derrick Henry was off the field during critical red zone snaps. He didn't get the indecision. And most importantly, he questioned why Harbaugh, as the head coach, didn't step in and take control when things started to go sideways. That's not just about one bad play call. That's about leadership. And that's where this conversation really starts to take shape. Because even if Harbaugh isn't calling every offensive or defensive play, even if he's not holding the clipboard for every down, he's still the one setting the tone. He's still the one responsible for making sure this team doesn't lose its identity. And when you see questionable in-game decisions, repeated mental errors, and a locker room that seems to be saying all the right things publicly, but not backing it up on the field, it's fair to ask whether the leadership is still hitting the way it should. What makes this moment even more critical is the fact that Lamar Jackson is entering a new phase in his career. He'll be pushing 30 soon. That's not old, but it's past the point where you can waste seasons. The Ravens need to capitalize on the window they have with Lamar, and the more time that passes without a real postseason breakthrough, the more it feels like the organization is squandering something special. And it's not just about this season's record. It's about the trends. It's about the playoff losses that look eerily similar. The lack of halftime adjustments. The timeouts burned in the second quarter. The fourth and short decisions that leave everyone scratching their heads. It's about a team that seems like it should be better than its record year after year, but never quite is. Harbaugh isn't a bad coach. In fact, he'd be the top candidate on the market if Baltimore let him go. Teams would line up to sign him, no doubt. But that's not the question. The question is whether he's still the right coach for this team in this moment. Sometimes, even great coaches hit the end of the road with one organization. Think about Bill Belichick in New England. Mike Tomlin's name has come up in Pittsburgh, too. These aren't bad coaches. But sometimes, a team just needs a new voice, a new vision. Right now, it feels like that might be where the Ravens are headed. You hear it in the voices of the fans. You hear it in the frustration from former players. And most importantly, you see it in the team's performance. Because this team has too much talent to be sitting at the bottom of the standings. This isn't a rebuild. This isn't a young, inexperienced squad trying to find its footing. This is a team that was built to win now. And when that team is 1-5, questions have to be asked, starting at the top. Some will say it's injuries. Others will point to execution. And both of those things are real. But at some point, you have to stop making excuses and start asking bigger questions. Why do the same issues keep popping up? Why does this team struggle to adjust when the game plan isn't working? Why does it feel like they're always one step behind in the biggest moments? And maybe the answer is that Harbaugh just doesn't have that edge anymore. Maybe he's too loyal to his assistants. Maybe he's too stuck in his ways. Maybe the fire that once made him one of the most feared head coaches in the league has dimmed just enough that players aren't responding the same way. Whatever it is, the Ravens can't afford to keep ignoring it. Because every year they wait is another year closer to wasting Lamar Jackson's prime. And every close loss, every early playoff exit, every game where the team looks unprepared or flat, it all adds up. It adds up to a franchise that's stuck in the middle, not bad enough to force a rebuild, not good enough to contend. And that's the worst place you can be in the NFL. So maybe it is time to start thinking about the future. Maybe it's time to have the tough conversation that no one wants to have. Not because Harbaugh has failed. He hasn't. But because maybe his time in Baltimore has simply run its course. That doesn't erase the past. That doesn't tarnish the legacy. It just means that for the Ravens to move forward, they might have to let go of the past. Even when that past includes a Super Bowl banner. And while the conversation around Harbaugh's future heats up, the reality is that decisions aren't made in a vacuum. This is the Baltimore Ravens. This is a franchise known for loyalty, structure, and consistency, sometimes to a fault. It's an organization that doesn't make rash decisions. They don't panic. They don't do firings mid-season. They evaluate. They calculate. They wait. And that very culture, which has made them one of the most respected teams in football, could be the same thing holding them back right now. No one around the league really expects John Harbaugh to be fired this season. Even if things go completely off the rails, even if the Ravens somehow finish with a record like 3-14, most insiders believe Harbaugh is safe until the end of the year at minimum. Some even think he's safe beyond that. Why? Because this is a franchise that values stability over chaos. And Harbaugh, for nearly 2 decades, has been the face of that stability. He's been more than just a head coach in Baltimore. He's been the voice, the shield, the public face of the entire organization. Steve Bisciotti isn't out there answering questions every week. Eric DeCosta does his part, but when the team needs to take accountability, it's always Harbaugh front and center, facing the media, taking the bullets, setting the tone. And for years, that's worked. But now, when the bullets are hitting harder and more frequently, it's worth asking whether that same dynamic is still what the team needs. Because while Harbaugh continues to be that central figure, the cracks in the system are showing. The loyalty that once built the Ravens up is now, in many ways, slowing them down. Take the coordinators, for example. Harbaugh has been known for sticking with his guys, maybe for too long. Greg Roman overstayed his welcome, and the offense stalled out because of it. Now it's Zach or running the defense, and questions are flying about his readiness and whether he's simply not up to the task. But he's still there, in large part, because Harbaugh trusts him. That trust is admirable. But when it starts costing you games, it becomes a liability. And that brings us back to the larger issue. How long can this team keep walking the same path, expecting different results? Even when they make changes, like bringing in Todd Monken, they still seem to fall into the same patterns. And that's not a knock on Monken entirely. In fact, Monken recently took responsibility for a controversial goal line sequence where the Ravens failed to score after repeated attempts. He openly admitted that the play calls weren't the best, and that, looking back, he wished he had done things differently. Now, that kind of accountability is rare and refreshing. It's what you want to hear from a coach. But at the same time, it highlights a bigger issue. Why are these mistakes still happening in the first place? Why, in a must-win game, are you making decisions that clearly don't reflect the strengths of your roster? Why is Derrick Henry not the focal point on 4th and inches? Why are you calling back-to-back tush pushes with a quarterback who hasn't proven to be effective in that scenario? Those decisions don't just happen. They're part of a larger culture. And that culture is set by the head coach. This isn't about blaming everything on Harbaugh. It's not about pretending that he's the only reason the Ravens are struggling. Football is a team game. Injuries have been brutal. Some players haven't performed. There have been dropped passes, missed tackles, blown coverages. All of that matters. But when you take a step back and look at the patterns, the common thread across multiple years and multiple coordinators and multiple rosters has been the same. The coaching at the top hasn't evolved enough to keep up. It's one thing to be a leader of men. It's another to adapt, to innovate, to keep growing when the league around you changes. Harbaugh made that adjustment once. After the Flacco era, he completely shifted his coaching philosophy to build around Lamar Jackson. And for a while, it worked. But now the league has caught up, and the Ravens are once again falling short when it matters most. That's why these next few games, starting with the matchup against the Chicago Bears, are so crucial. This could be the defining stretch of the Ravens season, not just for their playoff hopes, but for their identity as a team. This is their post-bye stretch, the moment when good teams lock in and start separating themselves. And for Baltimore, it's all on the line. Because if they lose to the Bears, at home, with a healthier roster, with Lamar back under center, that might be the point of no return. 1-6 in the NFL is a death sentence. It would force the organization to ask hard questions, not just about this season, but about the entire future. Do they try to salvage the year with a desperation trade? Do they start looking toward next year? Would they even consider trading key players like Mark Andrews or flipping assets to build for the future? That's the danger of falling into a hole this deep. The options become painful. You're not just evaluating week to week anymore. You're making decisions about the long-term health of the franchise. And if the Ravens don't come out of this by week with a renewed sense of urgency, if they fall flat again and lose to a team they absolutely should beat, the noise around Harbaugh's job is only going to get louder. And here's the thing. Even if they do win, that doesn't solve everything. A win against the Bears gets you to 2-5, not exactly a playoff lock. They would still need to go on a near-perfect run the rest of the way to even think about getting into the postseason. And not just making it in, but actually doing something once they get there. For Harbaugh, this isn't just about surviving the season. This is about proving that he still has the ability to take this team where it wants to go. The Ravens don't need another wildcard appearance that ends in a first-round loss. They don't need another promising regular season that collapses in January. They need a deep playoff run. They need to look like a legitimate contender again. And right now, they don't. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. Whispers are swirling in Baltimore, and the epicenter of the storm seems to be none other than Lamar Jackson. The star quarterback reportedly didn't hold back during a recent locker room exchange, candidly expressing his displeasure over a possible reunion. In our group, most don't want to see him back here at the Ravens, Jackson allegedly said, sending a ripple of speculation through the league. The comments, though informal, have ignited chatter among analysts and fans alike. Who exactly is the mysterious him? Sources close to the team suggest the reference could be pointing to a former player whose last stint in Baltimore ended on a tense note, leaving behind a trail of unfinished business and fractured relationships. Jackson's tone reportedly wasn't merely playful banter. There seems to be a genuine consensus among his teammates about the potential return. This revelation has fueled a frenzy of debate on social media, with fans dissecting every possible candidate. Some speculate it's a wide receiver known for spectacular plays, but also notorious locker room friction. Others point to a defensive standout whose clashes with coaches and peers made headlines. Whatever the case, the remarks have added a layer of intrigue to the Ravens' off-season maneuverings, raising questions about the locker room chemistry as the team eyes another run at the playoffs. Interestingly, the buzz isn't limited to Baltimore. Rival teams are reportedly keeping close tabs, seeing an opportunity to exploit internal divisions if negotiations heat up. Sports insiders are already predicting that this off-field drama could influence trade talks or contract decisions. The timing couldn't be more electric, as Jackson himself is coming off a season that showcased his elite athleticism and leadership, making his endorsement, or lack thereof, carry considerable weight. For now, the Ravens organization has remained tight-lipped, offering nothing but the standard statements about focusing on team goals. Yet, in the era of social media leaks and instantaneous reporting, Jackson's offhand comment has already set the rumor mill ablaze. Whether the him in question will ever return remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. Lamar Jackson's influence extends far beyond the 100 yards of scrimmage, shaping conversations, strategies, and perhaps even the future roster of the Baltimore Ravens. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.